Hey, it's me, Sam, from Hyperfix, the YouTube channel that you're watching this on now. You might have seen my other two videos, which were about completely different things, but it was a stepping stone to get what we are talking about today. So growing up, I've always kind of had challenges with mental issues, mental disorders, especially with ADHD and the likes. And while there are many other things that I would like to discuss, I would especially like to discuss ADHD and executive dysfunction. So growing up and even into my ripe old age of 18, I have experienced many mental disorders that have just affected my life in different ways. And while there's other things that I've kind of gotten over or figured out how to cope with, some things still persist into early adulthood. The condition that's affected me the most, and the one that's probably the best to talk about on this channel, is ADHD, and specifically executive dysfunction. The thing to note about ADHD is there's a lot of misconceptions about it, that there is one type of ADHD, which is, hyperactive, very hyper all the time, blah, blah, blah. And I know some people like that for sure. I'm not one of those people, at least in public. But ADHD is more of a spectrum, or something even beyond that, something I don't even really understand, of different traits that goes back to one core element, which is a dysregulation of dopamine. So for me personally, my ADHD more of manifests in a way of lack of motivation, feelings of depression, and executive dysfunction, which executive dysfunction has been a huge issue in my life, because executive dysfunction is a dysfunction of the executive processes in your brain. When thinking about executive dysfunction, think about it in the way of like the executive branch. It's the president or a business executive, or think about, just break down the word, executive. Executive functions execute what should be coming from your brain into what you are doing. Executive functions include attention control, inhibition, which is impulse control, working memory, which is things like where did you put your car keys, what time you're supposed to be at work or at class, where do the pickles at your sandwich spot, where are they supposed to go? How do you assemble any recipe that you've cooked a million times? What are those little details of math? And problem solving is another executive function. I'll give an everyday example of how executive dysfunctions can impact one's life. This is kind of a rough sketch of something that happens to me on almost a daily basis. So you wake up and you're like, oh, I've got like 3 hours till I've got to go to work. And so you start to get ready, take a shower, everything's going great. And then you get back in your room, you change your clothes, and then you look at your guitar and like, oh, I should play guitar because I'm a little bad at habit forming, because that's an executive function. And then you start playing your guitar and you get pretty into it. And what's supposed to be like 15 minutes ends up being 35 minutes. And then you look at your clock and you're like, shoot, I should be making breakfast right now. And so you go to make breakfast. And then you get distracted listening to music, listening to some sort of podcast or speech or talk, or talking to a family member. And what should have taken about 15, 20 minutes takes about 40 minutes. And so now you're even later. And so you eat, and then you pick up a book or open Instagram. I'm very guilty of both of these. And you start reading, scrolling, and you get really immersed into this. And then you realize you don't have time to make lunch. And now you planned this specific lunch that you want to make because it's tasty, it's healthier than having some, pre-packed snack junk food that's bad for you, even though it says it's good for you. And then because, you have bad problem-solving skills, you can't just think, oh, I can just grab some fruits and vegetables and put them in my lunchbox, and then I can go out and I'll have something maybe a little less good, maybe a little less substantial, but this is still according to my plan. Or you do think this, and then you can't go through with it. And so then you just kind of sit there thinking all is doomed. You don't pack a lunch, even though you still have like 15 minutes to do so. And you sit there and then you scroll, or do whatever distracts you from what you're supposed to be doing. And you're paralyzed, essentially. And then it's about 5 minutes after you should have been out the door. You run out the door, you get in the car, and then you think, shoot, I don't have my wallet on me. So you run back in the house, You grab your wallet. You come back to the car. And now suddenly you think, shoot, I don't have my water bottle on me. And that's too late. And you just drive out to work late. You don't have water for most of the day. You don't even end up eating. It's actually really bad and really embarrassing, to be honest. And that's a good everyday example of ways executive dysfunction can affect someone's life. Now, there are a couple of reasons why I want to tell these stories and why I want to make these videos. And that's because I know I'm not the only one. And truth be told, that's a small story I told, and even it's kind of funny, but ultimately it grows into something much worse, much darker, and much more depressing. Suddenly, a silly, clumsy, forgetful mind becomes trapped, becomes stuck, becomes lost. You know, especially with ADHD, your mind is running at 1,000,000 miles per second. You have all these thoughts, all these goals, all these aspirations, all these dreams, but you can't get a single one done. In fact, you can't live life normally, and you know, it's really terrible because it's embarrassing, because most people just think you're lazy or they think you're stupid. I've been called both. And something I say sometimes when I'm feeling in a bit of self-pity and a bit of anger, if I was born in any generation, I'd just be called stupid. But I hold out hope because I know I'm not the only one. I know there are many people who have dreams and aspirations and want to not just live but succeed and thrive, who have these same challenges as me, who know how hard it is when they see their friends developing amazing talents that they get praised for, and you're sitting here, you know, you can barely do what you love because you can't develop a talent. You can't develop a habit. You know, it sucks when you see people out living, you know, their best lives somewhere else, and you're stuck at home and you still need, you know, your mom to remind you to hang up your clothes. And not because you're stupid, not because you're lazy. I'm neither of those things. I don't want to be either of those things. It's how my brain works. But I know that I can find a way out. I can find a way that works for my brain and maybe for your brain. And we can not only learn how to survive, but how to succeed. So the reason I make this video is because I want it to be the first of many. I want it to be a series of learning, you know, through a couple steps, how to thrive as somebody with these issues, not just how to survive. I have a theory, a 3-step hypothesis on how we, as people with executive dysfunction, as people with neurological disorders, can not only learn how to survive, but how to thrive. The first is a foundational block. This is observation and self-forgiveness, as well as forgiveness of others. So first, observe yourself. What that means is just take note. What's wrong with your life? What do you wish could be different? What's holding you back, do you feel? And what do you feel are your strengths? Note these all down. Also, forgive yourself. This is something I struggle with so much. It's something I'm barely started on. And that's being able to just have the confidence in yourself that you can do this. Not that you're stupid, not that you're lazy, not that, you don't deserve it. You need to forgive yourself for your shortcomings, because if you don't forgive yourself for your shortcomings, how can you grow from that? And the third part of that step is to be able to forgive others. Other people say really hurtful things, but the truth is they're just ignorant. And I don't mean that in an insulting way. I mean, I'm ignorant of so many things. I'm sure I've accidentally insulted someone because, I don't know about their situation or, the caveats of their lives. We just have to accept that people don't understand, and that's okay. We shouldn't hate other people. I know I felt like that quite a bit, but this is necessary for growth. The second step is mitigation. Mitigation of the more negative effects of what we've been given. I would like to be able to get ready for work in a timely manner and to be able to have all my lunch. I would like to be able to develop habits on the things I love. I would love to be able to get what I would like to done. This doesn't mean it's going to look how it does for the normal neurotypical person, but it means that we get to almost a net zero, something where we can confidently say that we can get things done and is not putting up a facade. I lived so much of my life of this facade of this very smart, successful person who has an embarrassingly messy room, an embarrassingly messy car, an embarrassingly messy schedule, and I don't want to live like that anymore. The final step I call soaring, which is kind of a cheesy name, but it's essentially finding the elements of what we've been given, for instance, myself with ADHD, and to be able to go above and beyond with that, with our base of our self-forgiveness, of, knowing our strengths and our weaknesses, of having a good, base to go off of. Finally, we can use our strengths that we've noted in the first step to be able to grow in a unique way because of the way our brains are wired. Because our brains are wired differently, and that's okay. We think differently. I wouldn't trade anything in the world to think differently from how I do. And you shouldn't either. And instead of, having to endure these hardships because of it, feeling like we're broken, feeling like we're stupid, feeling like we can't succeed, we should instead know that we can succeed and succeed in a way other people can't. And that will be the third step. These are really difficult issues to talk about and to deal with because they affect every aspect of your life. They affect your social life. They affect your academic life. They affect your work life. They affect all your little dreams. And it feels like that you're drowning, really. But I know it doesn't have to be like this forever. Not for myself and not for you. And we are going to get through this. So if this sounds interesting, if this sounds like something you want to be a part of, I don't pretend to be a doctor. This is just people getting together and testing out what works, what doesn't work. Subscribe. Comment any thoughts you have, any opinions, any advice you have, because it would be much appreciated for building my dream for what this can become. Thank you.